Trust what I know. Trust what I know. Strangest feeling you felt before. It's just your bones, yeah. You might have scarred. It's just your bones, yeah. We steal off of those who snuff out the light, take all they own, blow up, start winning again, blow up, start over again, again. Well, I for one am known to blame, and I for one should have never came. Stick my feet on the ground, strap battle heels. Let's give it a show. Trust what I know. Trust what I know. Strangest feeling you felt before. It's just your bones, yeah. You might have scarred. It's just your bones, yeah.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm changing how I say this. I'm switching to good evening because my wife just informed me that I always say, "What is up, you guys?" And I'm going to stop with that. I'm just going to stop with that right now. So I'm just going to preface this by saying right now, real quick, by the way, how's everything sound? Everything sound good? It's hammer time. That's right. All right. So we have a major snowstorm, or snowstorm. It's not snowstorm. It's a thunderstorm. Yeah, it's not yet. It will, like, give it a week or two. We have a major thunderstorm coming in right now. So I could drop this stream could drop at any second. So
Just because
It's true. If you could hear the man himself right now, Mr. Earl Bennett, how you doing, my friend? Let me switch this. Let me see if this works. Hold on, I gotta make sure everything's good here because I have a tendency to mess this up. No, that's not it. There it is. There he is. Hey, Earl, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great.
Good. Thanks. Good. Can everybody hear Earl? Okay. Because last week I know there was some issues, and turns out that was my fault. Imagine that. I want to preface. I don't even know the word I'm looking for. I want to say right now that there is not going to be a show next Sunday. It's Packer Bear night, so priorities. I am actually going to move the show to Tuesday night next week, and I got a huge, what could be possibly a huge guest. I don't want to jinx it. So, I'm not gonna say anything right now. So, hey Earl, can you go ahead and talk a little bit? They need to see Earl.
Doing okay?
Earl's audio needs to be tuned up. Okay.
Test one. I'm peeking now.
Okay. I got you pegged on this. So,
I think so
Earl.
too. I don't know. I thought this worked yesterday, Jeff. Didn't we work on this?
That's what it was working yesterday. I don't know what's going on.
I don't know what the deal is either right now.
It's showing pegged. Levels absolutely pegged on this.
Well, I think so. I'm giving you plenty of signal now.
Huh.
I don't know.
I don't get it. I don't get it.
Test one, two.
All right. Can you guys hear him now? A lot better. They said it's a lot better. Okay, there it is.
Okay, that's cool.
All right.
Good.
Everything says
all
better.
right.
Oh, who we got in the chat tonight? Who we got?
CCM drummers here today. I see Steffa Benny. My wifey's here.
All right.
Jeff drums, 2112.
Beats by Jay.
Mrs. Hammer's in the house for a little bit anyhow. I know she's watching Beachfront Bargains, so I mean that's pretty important. It's our usual Sunday night ritual is Beachfront Bargains. So
I was able to interrupt Beachfront Bargains.
Yes,
wow.
You snuck it in, man. I don't know how it happened.
I got a lot of pull apparently.
It was really tough to get me out of that one. So
yeah. All right, Beats by Jay says everything we hear good. All right, we got Jeff Drums. Did you say that already? You said Jeff Drums.
Jeff Drums. I saw
Okay.
Jeff Drums.
All right. So, Earl. All right. I guess let's talk a little bit about I know we were talking a little bit when we were doing the Skype test yesterday. We were talking a little bit about blocking and some things of that nature. Now, I have some theories on blockers, especially the older bands like Led Zeppelin, Steely Dan, that their blocking is actually harming their future. And I'm not talking about just us in general, just because we want to do a drum cover. But I'm just saying in general that it is harming their future with younger music fans. I'd like to get your thoughts on that a little bit.
Well, I agree. Some of the classic rock guys, I guess it's just their publishing companies or really just don't want to see anything but the real music going out, and they're afraid of us out here messing up their songs. But Greta Van Fleet, I mean, I don't know why they're not embracing it, man. Why you got shut down? That just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I don't know why that got blocked. I think it's possibly just because they have an album coming out and they want to make sure that everything that's on YouTube is just official. It's the only thing I can think of right now. I mean, it's not the end of the world. It probably will go back up at some time. But
sure.
Until then, we're just gonna leave. I'll just deal with it. By the way, that video I did the drums only thing, and it is without a doubt the best performing drums only cover I've ever had in my life. So maybe maybe something will work out a little bit there. But
maybe you got some guitar players that are watching your channel and want to jam with it or something. Maybe
that's true. I never even thought of that. I mean,
that's why Jeremy does it on Little Drummer Channel. He puts them up because he's got guys, bass players and guitar players that actually play along with his tracks, which is kind of cool.
I've actually never thought of that. Really, the only reason I do a drums only cover is because I know a lot of people don't like them. Just because I got nothing else to put up for the week, and that's literally why I'm doing right now. I mean, we talked yesterday about how I'm doing a remodel job on my basement. I can't record any videos right now, so I'm kind of at a loss on trying to get videos out. So, all right, let's go back. Let's hear the story on the hammer. I got to know, how did you get the name the Hammer?
Okay, that's one that was up on my Ask Earl Anything a couple weeks ago. Basically, it came from I went to Nashville, Tennessee, and did a record back in '87. And one of the things that I learned during making that record back in the '80s was engineers wanted you to hit the snare drum as hard as possible. That was the big thing. And the reason for that was they were putting all their effects on tape. So when you were hitting the snare drum, it was triggering the reverb, which was going to tape. It was triggering their compressors and their gates, and they were getting a certain kind of sound, you know what I mean, on tape. So when I left Nashville, I had this thing in my head. I had to play everything as hard as I possibly could all the time. It was a constant thing. So I bought this snare drum in New York City. And by the way, we were going to talk about some vintage gear. This is the interesting thing about the snare drum story. I don't think I've ever told this story. When I bought the snare drum in New York City, I went to, I think I bought it at Drummer's World. I think it was Drummer's World where I bought it, in that Barry Greenspan's shop in New York City, which is no longer there anymore. And it was a choice between a Pearl free-floating brass 3.5 by 14 die-cast rims, killer high-pitch piccolo snare drum.
I had the 5 by 14 actually. I had the 5 by 14 for a while.
The 3.5 is what I bought. Okay, it's what I brought home with me. But the same day, they had a brass Supraphonic in there, and it was brass, and it was WFL. It had that WFL badge on it, and it had a little bit of, rust tarnish kind of on it. And they wanted $350 for that drum, and I think the brass piccolo was going for $315. I know. I know. Trust me. Trust me. I choke on that one all the time, by the way. I finally got a 5 by 14 Black Beauty about 7-8 years ago. I traded with a friend. I traded my my Supraphonic. I had a 6.5 by 14 bronze Supraphonic hand hammered.
Right.
I had that, and I traded it for the 5 by 14 Black Beauty with my friend Ken. Okay, because I hit that 5 by 14 Black Beauty, it was that brass shell, and I said, that's the sound of that drum in New York City that I didn't buy, that I kicked myself for. But anyhow, I got back to band rehearsal with the new piccolo, and I'm slamming. The lead singer turns around and goes, "You're hammering my head, Earl. What are you doing?" You're hammering that thing through my head. I'm going to call you the Hammer. And that's where it stuck. Kind of stuck from that rehearsal. And after that, it was the Hammer all the time.
Well, you're not a hard hitter though. That's the thing. I mean, it's
not anymore. I'm not.
Okay.
That's the funny thing. I've changed. I've gone back to being finesse a little bit. And as you get older, your hands start to hurt and things like that. And why kill yourself? And plus, if you've got your preamp set properly, you really don't have to work that hard. You know what I'm saying?
I come from the same school that you did. Is the very first time I was in a studio, it was the same thing. It was a same thing where you got to trigger everything. And I remember the engineer telling me, you have got to hit these drums consistently hard every time. And so that's exactly what I did. I remember trying to hit the snare, not as hard as I could, but at a decent level, toms too. And
oh yeah, everything.
I get accused of being a heavy hitter. I don't think I'm a heavy hitter. I don't hit hard, I don't put a lot of force inside my hit. I like to call it I'm almost like a golfer. I got a lot of club head speed to my hits,
Right.
But I am loud, and I do realize I'm a loud drummer. 2112 has got a question for us or you or both of us. Let's see here. I got a question for the show. Do you guys ever run out of ideas for drum covers, and how long does it take you to learn a song? You first. I think we got the same answer.
I think we both have a similar approach to doing drum covers. But I will tell you, this weekend I worked 2 days on my next drum cover, which is going to come out tomorrow. Okay? But the reason why I worked 2 days is because I decided I was going to put percussion on it. And I filmed my percussion. So I've got actual different tracks of me playing 4 different percussion instruments. Okay. Then I cut the drum track yesterday, and then I put it together in Final Cut. So I had like 7 different streams of video. That's what takes time, by the way.
Yeah.
Not the cutting the track. I cut the track in 4 takes, okay? When I got done with it, I listened to it this morning. I was like, I didn't like the way it was cut, so I came back this morning and recut it a little bit. And then I said, I can do a better drum track. So what did I do today? I recut the drum track, 4 more takes of it. So I did a total of 8 takes on this song. That's all I did. And then I came up with the drum track. And I think I'm pretty happy with what I came up with, because I did a little solo thing at the end on the outro on the percussion, because I had the percussion going. And the track is Africa by Toto. So it's a groove song.
Right.
So I'm playing all pocket, but at the very end of the song, I break into a little solo stuff over top of my percussion. But I had some fun with the percussion. Like I was playing shaker, and I was playing jingle bells and, sleigh bells, and I was playing djembe, and I played gong. So I have all those different parts you had to cut in, and it just took me 2 days to do it.
Yeah, it takes a long time.
I've got 2 that's what takes time. For me, though, most of my drum covers I do in like 2 hours or less, and that includes playing it, and I practice play. I don't sit there and I'll record what I practice, and sometimes I'll get it in the second take or the first take, and that'll be the one that goes. I may go 4, but I'll take the first one if it's good. So
for me, I actually spend more time probably setting up cameras than anything else.
Yeah.
Like getting the camera set and then actually getting ready to actually record the song. I spend zero. This is going to sound bad, but I've said this before, is I put 0 effort into the actual recording of my song. I mean, I want it to be good. I don't, if it's bad, I obviously do it again, but I'm usually like 1 or 2 and I'm done.
Yeah.
If I get through the song, and I'm like, that was good, I might go back and listen to it, and maybe I'll hear something. I'll go back and do it again. But for the most part, I am just one and done. I actually, and as far as learning a song goes, I don't learn drum parts. And this has actually kind of been a detriment to me a little bit, is I don't learn drum parts. I don't hear drum parts. I hear songs. So right. I hear guitar. Like I cue off what the guitar and vocals are doing most of the time, actually, when I record a song or when I play a song, And I got a gig with a band who previously before me had like 4 different drummers in the band, and they had 4 albums out with a different drummer on each album. So they would, it's 4 different drummers, 4 different styles of playing. And the leader of the band really, really, really wanted me to learn these songs exact. And I struggled with it. That's not how I do things, I think you're kind of the same way. I'm more of a grip it and rip it type of a drummer.
Well, just the way I learned how to play. I mean, when I was 18, 19 years old in college, and I would come home on the weekends and get gigs. I'd get called for gigs. I remember my first country gig. My first country gig is a real interesting country gig. I was called to play this bar in Long Branch, New Jersey. The guy who called me is one of the he was actually one of the guys who ran the music store, Blue Note Music in Long Branch. And he calls me up 2 hours before the gig. He can't do the gig. He says the gig pays $40. I said, okay, it's a country gig. I go to the country gig. I've never played any of the music. I don't know any music.
$40, that's big money, huh?
I was big bucks. I get to the gig, and the leader on the gig goes to me, hey, you want a beer? Now, I'm not a beer drinker. I have lots of reasons why I'm not a beer drinker. But I said, to be nice to the guy, I said, yeah, I'll have 1 beer. So I had a beer with him, and I set my drums up. We played the night. By the end of the night, this guy was so drunk, the lights went from being on to being dark. I dropped my drumstick in the last set, and I had to turn the light on to get it. Okay? And he got mad at me. He screamed at me. Okay? Now, I played the gig fine. It was like I knew what a 2-beat was. I knew what a rock groove was. I had a country shuffle. I had all that in my bag of tricks. But I didn't worry about knowing to play it like the arrangement. It was just go there. It's like, this is a shuffle. The bass player would say, shuffle. Okay, now we're playing a shuffle. Oh, blues. Play a blues groove. So I learned grooves, and I learned how to play grooves with songs. Anyhow, the funny thing at the end of the night, I'm packing up, and the guy goes to me, he goes, "Hey, you want to come back tomorrow?" As he's handing me $35. And I said to him, the gig paid 40, I was told. He goes, "No, man, you had a beer. $5 for a beer?" Now, this is 1979. We're not talking about, maybe it's a beer, $5 someplace in.
Well, he had a tip.
Yeah, I had to pay for his 5 other beers is what you're talking about, okay? He drank half the darn check away for all of us. Anyhow, needless to say, I didn't come back the next night. I told him to go pound salt. That was the end of that. So you have to know when to say no to some people like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But,
go ahead.
Playing this way is, playing with people that I never played with before. I did that so many times in my career. Like, I can go on a bandstand and just find the groove and play. That's what we do. So that's how I approach drum covers, same way.
I'm very similar to that. I actually did a gig. I did a string of gigs with a band 2 summers ago, and I'm not exaggerating. Out of the 40 to 40, 50 songs that we would do a night, I had only heard maybe 15 of them ever before. And actually, I never even listened to them once I was doing the gigs with the band. I never even went back and listened to them. Because the bass player was a guy I had played with regularly, and he would just turn around, he'd look at me, and he'd go, "All right," same thing. Play a 2-beat, go, and then he'd stop, start, go like that. Oh, switch to halftime here, And I just use my ears. I had a drum teacher tell me one time. He says, "Your ears are incredible. If you could actually practice all the other stuff, you'd be a really good drummer." Because I can just hear music.
That's it. And that's the key to the whole thing, is being able to hear music. So when we're working on these covers, we hear the changes. When they're going certain places because of the chords you hear.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It sets you up, and you understand the phrases of the tune. Most of these tunes are 8-bar phrases, 16 bars. So once you've got the phrases in your head, and A section, B section. So once you understand form of music, it's very easy to play these songs usually. Now, when you get the guy that wants it done exact, that's a problem, Or when you're laying on top of a drummer, like I did this cover, Four Seasons cover, Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, Who Loves You. I was laying on top of the drummer on that one, so I had to nail that thing. But the funny thing was, I used to play that when I was a kid. I remember trying to get that hi-hat thing with the two-handed thing.
Right.
So I had a lot of fun playing that one. So it was kind of fun. I almost got it. I almost nailed it, So
laying on top of the drummer, yes. That's why I found drumless tracks, and I really, really, really like drumless tracks. I love them.
So do I. Yeah.
Because I don't have to think about it. I can just play the song,
And that's why when Africa came up this week, I jumped on that bad boy, because it's not going to be there for very long. It'll be there for maybe a week, and then one day they'll decide they got to get rid of that thing.
You think it's going to get blocked?
I don't know if it won't get blocked. It's actually blocked in 2 countries.
Is it?
Yeah, Belgium and somewhere else. But it's released in the United States. I've had that happen with YouTube, where it says it's blocked in certain countries, and then people still see it somehow. Like, I had an Eagles cover I did last year when I only had probably about 100 subscribers at that point. And it was, what was it, One of These Nights. And it came up, it's blocked in all these, it had a list of the countries that it was blocked in. But most of my subs saw it for some reason. Mm-hmm. So I was like, well, okay. Even guys in the United States, I knew they were United States drummers. I thought it was blocked in the United States. Apparently, it didn't block on mobile. It only blocked on computer at that point. Now, I don't know if they got that figured out.
There's just no rhyme or reason to any of this. Beats by Jay wants to know where you can find the drumless track for Africa.
I think I found it on Free Drumless Tracks, Beats. Jay? Free Drumless Tracks. I call them Beats. I'm beating Jay. Beats by Jay.
Beats by Jay.
I just read it, and I said it. But you get the picture. I think it was Free Drumless Tracks had it. Yeah, and it's still up there as far as I know this week.
Okay. So
CCM called it. CCM just put one in, didn't he? There's a huge difference playing over top of. We know Matthew is going to defend the doing it the right way, and I had a discussion with him on his own channel last week, And I agree that it takes a certain level guy to write out all the parts. And Matthew writes out all the parts. CCM drummer writes out all the parts, and he does a great job at what he's doing, you know. But for me, that just takes too much work. Now, if I got to read a chart, like the swing stuff I'm doing, the Duke Ellington stuff, I love reading charts. But charts are interpretation.
Right, exactly.
Which is what I love. I love interpreting. So
I mean, that's why you like. I mean, you were in jazz. You were in jazz ensembles all through college, correct?
I didn't get to play in the jazz ensemble. I did a lot of Broadway show type stuff in college.
Okay.
And I played some jazz ensembles when I got out of college. My jazz ensemble in Jersey City State was hard to get into, and the guys that were in it were great players. They were all monster players. So
Right.
I wish I could have gotten to that jazz ensemble. But the big thing I had in college was I got into the musical Grease. And you want to know why I got into musical Grease? Because I could play rock and roll.
Okay.
It was funny. We auditioned for the musical Grease, and it was the same jazz band drummers in my class, and then a couple other younger guys coming up trying to get in the show. And one of them got in it. We shared the seat, switched percussion 2 nights, and drum set. But the reason I got that show was because all those other guys listened to the cast album, looked at the charts, were reading the charts, and I saw the song Hand Jive. It was like bump, 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 bump.
The Bo Diddley thing.
And I played the Bo Diddley thing with a rock funk groove. And I just rocked it. And that's what won the audition. Because I didn't come in there and do anything. I didn't do any homework, which is typical of me in college, by the way. Doing homework.
It's typical of me too. Very typical of me. I get a gig, I'll get a call for a gig, and I don't like the songs. And it's like I'm at the point now, I'm at the age now where I kind of don't want to play unless I like the music, there are exceptions, but for the most part, I don't want to play when I don't like the music. And
it's a huge exception if they're paying you $500.
Right. Oh, then I'll learn it, I will learn it and love it, I did a dueling piano gig last summer, and like they did a whole medley of Disney songs. But once again, like the money was good. Actually, what's funny is because they never told me they were going to do all these Disney songs, though. Like, and they did it in a medley, and it was the same thing. I'm in the back, just playing along, watching fingers, trying to keep up, looking for changes, Yeah. And we get done, and I'm like, "What the hell was that?" So I looked at the guy, I'm like, "What the hell was that?" He goes, "Oh, we didn't tell you about it." I'm like, "No, you didn't tell me about that." Well, you did a good job. You did a good job. So that's being able to process and listen to music is a big thing. I watch fingers. I don't know about you. You're in a bandstand. I watch the fingers of the bass player. Like I'll just know if I'm looking at him like 8 bars and I see him start to move. I'm like, all right, I know something's coming up in the song.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. That's just experience. There's no.
Mine's
substitute
mostly
for experience.
listening. I'll say that. I don't watch guitar players. I'm not a guitar player. I faked my way through guitar methods in college. So I mean, that's another story. But I have lots of stories, as you all know, so that's why you got me here, I think.
Your wife says, "Bad boys, do your homework."
Mrs. Hammer's a college professor, so she knows I would fail her classes. By the way, she's tough. She doesn't give tests like multiple choice tests. She gives essay tests and papers to write. And I hated writing papers in college. Okay.
Richard Stewart. Can you guys discuss playing a cover using your own chops rather than playing like the original? You first.
Say that again. What's the question?
Can you guys discuss playing a cover, using your own chops rather than playing like the original? I guess it's kind of what we were talking about before here a little bit.
It's kind of like what we are talking about. I mean, I think that a lot of my covers, I mean, like I just did that Free song, All Right Now, right? Which I had to pitch down to get it. I heard it sounds like Jimi Hendrix, somebody told me.
That's block 2, huh? Jeez.
That's block 2, yeah. I listen to that song a lot, but I never listen to it to learn it. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I listen to it for enjoyment. So it's one of those things that comes on the rotation. I listen to it. So I knew there was that little drum breakdown. I just played it the way I thought I heard it. You know what I'm saying?
I do that a lot too.
I didn't really think about it. You know, that drum breakdown, da 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 da, and he's all on the snare drum, right? And then it comes down, and then it comes to the cowbell, and I put the cowbell up just to hit the quarter note cowbell thing. And then I went back into the groove, you know. And I think that's just the way I learned music. You know, I was just listening to it.
I do that I do that at the school I teach at, where I don't know if I ever talked about this, but like we put kids in groups. It's a school rock type thing, so we'll put kids in groups, and I'll have to teach them the songs. And like I'll see a song come up and listen. Like, I know this song. I played this song a million times, right? Yeah. And I'll start teaching the song, you know, and we'll be playing along, and like I'll hear like say a drum break coming up, and it's the same thing. I'll remember it how I remember playing it. Like I've played it in bands for 20 years or whatever, right? Well, over the years, it's morphed and morphed and morphed, and I'll be like, "It's this," and I'll show it to him, right? And then we'll go back and we'll listen to it, and he'll be playing along, and we'll get to that part, and it's nothing like that. You know, it happens a lot, man. It happens a lot.
Well, when you're in bands, you get away with stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I mean, I also remember learning stuff off the record player when I was a kid. Like a lot of my Chicago repertoire is from a record player. So I was trying to figure out what Danny Seraphin played. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't tell. You couldn't see a video of him playing it. So the way I played 25 or 64 was the way I heard it, you know?
Right.
The way I played the ending to Make Me Smile was that listening to it over and over again and moving the needle back and forth to hear it. So that I would kind of work the fill out, you know what I'm saying? So there were things that we did that way, we learned that way, but today it's a lot easier to learn a song if you really want to learn it exact.
It's way easier. Way easier.
I mean, I'm teaching a guy right now who does these metal, he's in the metal, like heavy metal. I don't know what that means anymore, heavy metal, but I mean like death metal kind of stuff. Like that kind of stuff, you know, with the double pedal stuff. And he comes in, he's got his phone here, and he basically is reading it off the phone like he's reading it off Rock Band. You know, it's written in Rock Band format, you know?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's on his droid. And that's how he learns music. And I keep saying to him, okay, Christian, now what I want you to do is I want you to play a song without reading it.
Right.
I mean, because can you play without reading it? Can you play without a click? Those are things that kids today have a problem with. They can play with a click all day long.
They have no idea what it's like not to play with a click. I like playing to a click to me when I was younger was the hardest thing in the world.
Right.
It was like I couldn't grasp it. And a lot of older guys really, really have trouble with that. I've gotten two gigs because the drummer before me couldn't play to a click track. And they're both really good drummers. They just couldn't do it. They just didn't understand that. And now I'm seeing a lot of kids don't know how to play without the click, you know?
Oh yeah, it's a big thing. And I mean, you're right. To learn how to play with a click is really important today. If you want to play in the studio, you got to play with a click.
You want to play live, you got to play with a click because so much stuff is on tracks now, you know?
Oh, all the church stuff. I do so much church stuff where it's all on tracks. Uh-huh. Or I'm running a click while you know, we're playing the song. We'll run a click to play along with, keep the band in time.
Right.
And these guys can't play without the click. You take the click away and it gets the time just floats away somewhere. So playing solid time becomes a hard thing. Where what I found is when I was playing for the last 7-8 years, I've been playing with clicks all the time on Sunday mornings. I found that my time has gotten so much better because now my internal time's really there because I'm working with clicks all the time.
Right.
So playing 68 beats per minute is not that hard to do by myself. And that's why I have those exercises where you work with 60 on a metronome. I hear the thunder lightning for me too now.
Is that me or you?
No, that's me. I can hear it's me. So who knows?
We're 1,000 miles apart, so it's not the same storm for sure.
No, it's a different one. We'll see where it goes. But we got a half hour in, so.
Yeah.
Anyhow, that's the click stuff. Anybody else got a question?
No, nobody appears to have a question. Now, getting back to the time thing. Now we were talking a little bit yesterday that what did you say? You're a behind the beat snare drum player, or used to be?
No, I'm ahead of the beat.
You're ahead of the beat. Yes, you're okay.
Ahead of the beat on the kick, and I push the on the beat or maybe play a little behind sometimes. I can pull it back. I can pull back the snare behind, but my kick seems to always be just ahead of the beat all the time for some reason.
I'm the same way.
It drives me nuts.
I've gotten a little better at it, and one thing that has helped is, I don't know if you're familiar with the Gary Chesterbrooke
I'm
book.
with. I never played it though.
Okay,
I know it.
Now he has a method in that book where he calls it 5-way dependence. But the thing that really, really helped me with kind of to start to understand time is I would sing the quarter note pulse. So you're singing ta, ta, ta with the quarter note pulse. And then you're it's something about it. Something clicks in your brain to help you line up your kick and your snare. You got to put a lot of time into it. You got to be patient, because I'm teaching that it's at the school I teach at now. I'm teaching to some of these kids, and I'm like, well, I really got to work it, because kids are smart, man. They're going to know if you don't know how to do something, So I'm like, I really got to go.
I try to not to show them anything I can't do.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it's getting harder and harder.
That's why I got them working out of that Carmen Appice book, because I know that book. Yeah.
I actually, going back to the school thing, it was, we had, the kids got assigned Rock and Roll by Zeppelin. And so I would always do the end drum fill. I just kind of do whatever the hell I wanted to do. And it was kind of like, man, all right. He's like the top drummer, this kid Adam. He's the top drummer. He's going to want to learn this exact. I'm like, crap, I got to learn this. So I'm like going on YouTube and Bonzolium. Thank God for Bonzolium, because he explained it really well. And it's one of those things. It's like, it's not that hard. It's not that hard. But I'm not an exact type drummer guy. Okay. So you had talked a video a long time ago about, it's one of the first videos I saw from you. You talked about an experience in Nashville, and I thought it was a really, really great story about how to take a negative and turn it into a positive. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. You're talking about the John Hammond story.
Yes.
Here's the funny thing about John Hammond. And John Hammond, I met John Hammond in the studio that night when he replaced me for the last 4 songs of this album I was on. And John Hammond, just to give a little bit of his background, is he's played with everybody from, Amy Grant's one of the big persons he played, big Nashville people he played with. But he's done a lot of sessions in Nashville. I'm sure he's done some country stuff. And he was he's an amazing drummer. His brother was the big guy in town when I got there, though, his brother Mark. So they got John for a song and a dance that day to come down and do these 4 songs. But the nicest guy in the world, and was the drum lesson. And all I can tell you about it was, most guys will quit. They'll quit at that point when they get put in that situation where they're being replaced. And I didn't quit. I sat there. I watched him. I hung out in the drum booth with him. I even got him in Modern Drummer magazine. My wife ended up doing an article on him, which I think the night I told him that, when we were walking him to the car, I said, my wife writes for Modern Drummer magazine. I think he thought I was full of crap. But you know what I mean? But about 2-3 months later, my wife was calling him and saying I want to do an interview, and she interviewed Mark and John Hammond. And Mark was the hot guy in town, and John was the up-and-coming guy coming into town. But John had the longevity in town. He's the guy who played with everybody from that point in time in the 80s right till today. He still plays in town with some of the hot players in town. So he's known. His brother Mark went on to write music and stuff and compose. But, it's the Kenny Aronoff thing. When Kenny Aronoff got to that point for Cougar's first album and he got replaced, Cougar said, well, why don't you go home? And Kenny Aronoff said, no, I'm not going home. Now, I didn't have the option of going home because they only had one. They paid for one plane ticket, and it was leaving the same time they were leaving. So I was just stuck watching them. But I could have been really pissed and been really pouty and put on my little Eeyore face that I can do, and I didn't. I basically sat there and learned. And when I came home, I said, I know I got to learn to play with a click. I know I got to learn to hit the drums hard. And it became my thing to want to play in the studios even more. So I turned that bad situation to a positive. And, I think that's what you got to do in life sometimes. You got to overcome. Can't quit.
what was the? I mean, what before that? What had transpired? I mean, were you just having problems with getting through the song, or you weren't
Great
up?
question.
Yeah.
Yeah. What happened was we were playing a ballad. It was a song called "Here We Are," and it was probably about 70 beats per minute with a click. And I was just pushing and pulling. I was pushing and pulling the click. And the day before we did a ballad, and we did it without a click. Matter of fact, we did 5 songs the first day, and I'm on all 5 of them. But they were the rock and roll tunes. You know what I'm saying? They were the rock tunes. And the one ballad we did at the end of the day, it wasn't going to be the hit in their mind. It wasn't the song that was going to be one of their songs, you know, to push. This was like a real praise and worship kind of song. So it had that kind of certain kind of sound that they were looking for. And I went in there and I spent 3 hours cutting this drum track with them because we cut it together. It was the band played and we were having problems because of me. So all I remember was we're at lunch now. We're at the West End Cooker having lunch, and we're sitting there, and they're calling Mark Hammond up, and they're calling Gary Lunn, the bass player, and they're saying, we're going to bring Gary Lunn in, and Mark couldn't do it, and he recommended his brother John. And that evening, John showed up, and he played the next 3 tunes, which were all with click and sequencer. And then he came in the next day on Saturday. This was a Friday. And then on Saturday, he came in and he cut a track with Gary Lunn live. Gary Lunn came and did all his bass parts on Saturday and basically cut the one live track. So it wasn't us playing on it. It was guitar, it was Mark Baldwin and then Gary Lunn and John Hammond and our keyboard player, Mark Tumanoska, played on it. And the rest of us sat there and watched. And then they did vocals. Maybe it was midweek. Maybe I thought it was Saturday. I could have the day wrong, but it was an interesting. All I remember was it was 2 days. He came in both days and cut it. And he recorded on the same drums I recorded on. Just brought his cymbals and a snare drum in. You know what I mean?
Were they studio drums or were these yours?
They were studio drums. They're actually the drums of a guy named, oh gosh, let me think of his name now. He was another guy who did a lot Christian artists like Petra and stuff. Oh, what's his name? Anyhow, he had this set of pearl fiberglass drums, power toms, and he wanted the Hal Blaine thing, and he stripped all the covering off of them, so they were fiberglass.
So they looked like the Belmar shells.
Yeah, they look like the Blamire shells.
Or Blamire, yeah.
Right, yeah, and basically that's what I did with my pearl fiberglass toms when I got them because the wrap was already ripping off of them. So I said, let's just rip the wrap off. They look cool without the wrap on them, to be honest. My goal with my concert toms was to put double heads on them and paint them black. When I had my friend DMR Drums, Dan at DMR, he was supposed to help me get them painted and stuff, but that never happened.
Yeah.
You know, he moved and the rest is history, you know. But
how many kits you got now?
I have 3 kits technically, and they're 2 are hodgepodges. You know, I gave 1 kit to a church a couple years ago, which the church just broke up too. It was a Blue Sparkle Ludwig kit. My wife kicks me sometimes, and when I say it, I mention it. She goes, "Yeah, you shouldn't have done that." You know.
Yeah.
It was a Blue Sparkle Club Day kit from '65. With it, they sounded great.
They got the mojo. They got that mojo. Yeah.
They did. They had the mojo, and I really had them cranked in. But then I have the fiberglass toms. I got a Gretsch bass drum, 22-inch, that it looks like Ludwig because it's got Ludwig lugs on it. And then I've got 18-inch Gretsch bass drum and the 20-inch Gretsch bass drum. So I got 3 bass drums. And I've got roto toms I can put with the other bass drum. I got the concert toms go with the bass drum. I got the Maple Gretsch 18-inch bass drum with a 6.5 by 10, 8 by 12, 14 by 14. And then my main kit is my 14 by 20 walnut Gretsch kit, which is in most of the videos. And it's got 8 by 8, 8 by 10, 8 by 12, 9 by 13, 14 by 14, 16 by 16. So with that many toms, the kits look like I have all these different drum kits, but it's just me pulling from different kits, you know?
It does look like you have a lot of drum sets. It looks like you have more. I have 5 kits right now. and I've got them like I know you only see the one or two in my videos, but I do have a lot more drum sets. I have them scattered about. I can't keep them all in my house because my house is too small. So I got like one here at a rehearsal spot. I got another one over here. What are you using? How many snare drums you got now too? I mean, what are you using? I know you talk about that DMR snare drum all the time, and that is an incredible sounding snare drum. What's the history on that thing?
Well, the history on that thing is, this is a great story, actually. I was looking in Craigslist for gear, as I used to do all the time back in 2008 or 9 or 7. I can't remember what year it was. And there was a ad that says, we'll trade vintage gear or custom drums for drum lessons. So I saw it. It was like 11 o'clock in the morning. I was home, working from home in my home office. Called the number up. And it was Dan at DMR Drums. And I said, yeah, I'm interested in doing this. You know, I can teach you drum lessons. I said, where are you? And he goes, Botwell Avenue, which is about 5 minutes from my house. I said, I'll come over at lunchtime. And I went over there at noontime and went in his shop. And he had just opened a shop with his partner. And they were going to Taiwan to buy, they were going to get like their own lugs made in Taiwan. There's a drum called Ming drums in Taiwan.
Yes, I know the ones you're talking about.
You can only get them in Taiwan.
Yeah,
you can only get them in Taiwan, okay? So anyhow, he had brought some stuff back from Taiwan, and one of the things was this cast aluminum shell. As a matter of fact, it's the same cast aluminum shell that's on the Gretsch cast aluminum 6.5 by 14. They made those cast aluminum shells for Gretsch. They made them for DW. They made them for Peace. It's the same shell.
Okay.
This company in Taiwan makes these shells. He had one. So we're walking through, and I sit down in the kit, and I play, and I show him a couple things. And he says, okay, I'm interested in taking lessons with you. I was the first guy in, got the deal. So he said, what can I do for you? And I looked over, and I saw that shell on his bench, and I said, you can make that snare drum for me. And he goes, that's that snare drum? I said, yeah, that one. He only brought one of these shells back with him. It was this cast aluminum shell. Mm-hmm. I said, yeah, I want that one. I said, what's it going to cost? How many lessons do I have to do to get that snare drum? So he thought about it, and he said, well, what do you charge a lesson? I said, about $50 an hour. So he said, well, that's about $700 or $650 or something. I said, okay. And we started working off the snare. We started working off the lessons. And pretty soon he was like, he wanted to make this drum for me because we became friends, of course, and he gave me a snare drum. And the funny thing was, there was a little scratch from his suitcase on the brushed aluminum. I mean, it was brushed aluminum, just like you see the Gretsch ones. And he was like, I just don't like the brushed aluminum with the scratch in it. I was like, okay, what do you want to do? Let's powder coat it. So we went to a powder coating place, and I picked out the powder coating on it. So the drum has got a black powder coating that doesn't leave fingerprints on it. So I can pick the drum up and you won't see anything. Like there are satiny ones. I think the Gretsch one that came out this past year that's black for the 135th anniversary or something with the funky throw off. I think that one has got that satiny kind of powder coating on it. So he built the drum with the lugs he got from the Ming factory and powder coated it. And I had him put a Bennett R1 throw off I wanted with the whole system. The system where you pull the butt plate off and you pull the snare side off, and you can take the snares off without having to adjust anything, loosen any nuts. Okay. You know, take the strings out or anything. So he called Ron Bennett up, and Ron Bennett sold him the R2, which is the ones he only put on his drums, which had the little curve on the throw off. So I got one of those on the drum. So the drum is very unique. Anyhow, a year later, he went to NAMM. He bought 5 more of those shells, and I happen to know that he sold all those drums except one he gave to Rich Redmond of Jason Aldean. So
it's a very unique sounding snare drum. It really
it's like a beefed up Supraphonic is what it is. That's why I can't have a Supraphonic, because
it's got more throat to it. It seems like to me, though. It seems like it's more throaty. You know,
it is. It's got some huge cojones, man. The thing just cracks, and Everybody that hears that drum loves that drum. I've brought it into colleges, and the symphonic snare drum guy, the percussion teacher, comes out and goes, "Where'd you get that drum?"
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, "It's a cast aluminum." He was like, "That's a perfect orchestral drum."
I mean, is there anybody making cast aluminum drums?
Gretsch does.
Is the Gretsch does? Okay.
Yeah. I had
Anybody else?
Well, Peace was making one for a while. Noble and
See,
Cruz
I always thought of Peace as like a low end drum company, though.
It is.
Okay.
It is. It's like I wouldn't buy Peace or Dixon. I mean, even though Bissonette plays them, I wouldn't buy Dixon.
Yeah.
You know, you're not getting the Bissonette kit unless you're spending $5,000. And who wants to spend $5,000 for a Dixon kit? I mean, come on.
Who wants to spend $5,000 on any kit? It's
yeah, on that one. So
I don't spend money on drum sets. People, you don't. That's the thing is like a lot of people. You don't have to spend a lot of money to get a quality drum set. I mean, obviously, if you're buying a Gretsch, you can't get a Gretsch at a good price. I mean, you once in a while you will stumble upon a Gretsch. Gretsch is like Apple and DW both. They both seem like Apple. Those drum sets just hold their value. You know. You don't seem to stumble across them like you do a Ludwig, where I just stumble across a Ludwig kit for $200. You know, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's never happened to me. I never even see Gretsch kits for sale, really.
Gretsch kits, they keep their value. I think I could definitely get $1,100 for that kit, which is what I paid for it new.
Yeah.
I mean, $1,100 is not a lot of money today either, by the way. But I could probably get $2,000 for that kit, even though I've drilled holes in and all the other stupid stuff I've done to those drums.
Yeah.
You know, and they were bought in New York in 1979. They got pearl tops drilled through it with the 7/8 hardware on it. Mm-hmm. Now and I couldn't figure out why they sound so choked. That was the hardware that was on it. When I went to Nashville, I learned about rims mounts. That was the thing I learned about. Another thing I learned in Nashville was rims mounts. It was Dennis Holt was the name of that drummer that I was talking about in Nashville. Dennis Holt was the guy. He's a studio drummer in Nashville too. He's played with like the Oak Ridge Boys, a lot of different people, but Dennis Holt was the guy who's had that kit. And I'll never forget, he had an 8x8, a 10x10, a 12x12, and a 14x14 fiberglass drums. The 10, 12, and the 14x14 were on rims mounts. That's what I used for the session. But when I got in there, I set the 8x8 up to have that Jeff Porcaro thing, and I hit it, and the engineer goes, take that thing down. Has no sustain. I didn't hear it. But there was a total difference in the sustain with having a 7/8 pearl mount stuck into the shell versus on a rims mount. Yeah. And that's what I was sold on them. So I started buying, I bought rims mounts for everything, you know.
CCM Drummer wants to know, which do you think, oh, this is a loaded question if I've ever heard one. Which do you guys think is better, DW or Gretsch? Well, I have my opinions on DW, so you go ahead. You go first.
I think Gretsch are better than DW, to be honest. DW makes some great drums, and I don't know why I'm saying it, because it's not like I'm ever going to get an endorsement from DW, that's for sure. I think they make some great drums, but they mess with their shells. You know what I'm saying? And Gretsch has got a formula for a shell that's a winner. It's such a winner that everybody in LA was playing these drums in the studio. Porcaro had a Gretsch kit. Vinny had a Gretsch kit. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, I mean, a lot of guys that play Yamaha have Gretsch kits in their studios. They play them in their studios. So there's something about that gumwood, the gum maple shell that just has a certain sound. It's a thin shell. Matter of fact, I think the Tama Star drums and the Star Classics were made to sound like Gretsch drums with that thin shell.
I am not a fan of DW. I think as far as sound goes, they sound good, and they're obviously really well-made drums. You know, there's a lot of quality there. But I think they have a very generic sound to them, I guess I want to say. They don't have the mojo like you're talking about, like a Gretsch kit has. A really good Gretsch kit. Not even even a midline Gretsch kit. My kid actually bought one of those Gretsch Energy kit. I think it's the Energy.
Oh, wow.
I was amazed at how good these drums sound once you put good heads on them. You know,
Yeah.
I put Evans heads, Coda, and I'm like, these drums just sing. The snare drum's garbage, but the kick drum and the toms, they just have a nice, really nice full tone to them. Now, as far as DWs go, they're good drums. They tune up great. They sound great, but they don't have that mojo. The thing DW has though is their finishes are absolutely phenomenal. They really are. Their drums are really, really, really beautiful drums. So that's where I stand on the DW versus Gretsch thing.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. They make great finishes and stuff. And if somebody gave me a DW kit, I'd definitely play it. You know what I mean? I'd love to get one of those Edge snare drums too. For some reason, they're kind of cool, but I just couldn't see myself buying a DW kit.
I have a PDP kit. I have one of the Mexican-made PDP kits before they ship production off to China, and man, it really is a good sounding drum set. And you know, I think I want to say I paid $600 for that kit. It's a really, really, really good sounding drum set. Rich Raw Dog Drums wants to know when you say you think Thomas Star Classics were made to sound like Gretsch. Is there more to that question? I guess there might be more to that.
Well, I think I know where he's going with it.
Okay.
In the 90s, they had a thin shell. Now, one of the things Tama did with the Star Classics, though, is Tama put a reinforcing ring on it, kind of like the DWs. But you could get those drums, the maple ones, without the reinforcing rings, and they sounded a lot like Gretsch drums, thin shells. Okay. If you hear Peter Erskine's Tama Star kit, which is the new high-end drum for Tama, those things have a Gretsch sound to them. They're beautiful drums. They sound amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably the only drum kit that if I had money and I could just spend money as much as I want, I'd buy one of those kits. They're beautiful drums. I think they are beautiful drums. I don't know what it is, but they have a certain sound. Everybody that I've heard play them, Billy Cobham, Peter Erskine, the guy who plays with Snarky Puppy, what's his name?
Is that Sput?
Yeah,
Sput. Yeah.
Robert Sput, see you right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I mean, those guys' drums sound amazing drums. They got that oomph to them. You know what I mean? There's that certain something.
Yeah.
So.
What about the dry cymbal craze?
Well, you know, the funny thing is, I have a Paiste Dark Energy Mark 1 Dark Ride, you know, and I bought that at Forks Drum Closet in 2006, and it was a prototype. And because the real ones cost about $375, and I got this for $235. Okay, it sounded exactly the same to the one I hit in the store, so I took that one. Of course, prototypes don't have value, like having the Paiste script logo on it and stuff. But it was the sound that, you know, Gad was getting. I mean, I really think that is kind of goes back to those 70s ride cymbals with all the tape on them. You know what I mean? When you put the tape on them, you get that dried out sound. And I think it's just gone crazy now. I mean, now you got all these special K cymbals, you know, that are all dark and dry, and
I don't mind.
They sound nasty, some of them.
I don't mind the dryness on a ride cymbal. I actually like a really thin ride cymbal that's just got that nice dry sound to it, you know? I'm not a fan of all these like you said, these ultra super dry. They sound like cracked cymbals to me. I have a downstairs. I have a Zildjian A custom or something with a big crack in it. It just sounds like what guys are going out and spend a whole bunch of money for on these specialty effects cymbals. I can't. It's like a phase to me. Like power toms was a fad. And like someday you're gonna be stuck with these cymbals with holes in them, and you're gonna wish you had just a regular set of good old A's. Like the same time I had a big old Pearl BLX kit with big old deep toms. I'm like, gosh, I just wish I had some regular toms. So I've kind of learned I don't go by fads anymore. I just stick with stride and true. You know,
I really wanted a power tom kit. I always wanted one. I bought my kit in '79 before the power tom fad started. It was just the beginning of it. Let's put it that way. Slingerland was making deep shell toms for Nigel Olsson at that point in time. Because if you ever saw Nigel's maple kits with the wood hoops on them, or the concert tom ones he played in the Central Park concert, Elton John in Central Park, Nigel's got these really deep. Everything is 12 deep, I think, too. I think it's like 6 by 12, 8 by 12, 10 by 12, 12 by 12.
6 by 12.
Yeah, they were super long. They all seemed like they were square. I don't think they were 10. I think they were 12. And
That's
I mean,
ridiculous.
it was a special kit for Nigel, right? Nigel Olsson got this special kit. And then the next year they came out with all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I bought that Gretsch kit, and it was like I was out of the Power Tom thing because I bought the 12, 13, 14 by 14, 16 by 16. And then about 2 years later, I bought the 8 by 10. And the funny thing was the guy in Frank Ippolito's shop, a guy named Tim Herman, who's made some incredible snare drums. I wish I bought one of his snare drums. He was going to sell me, he made custom snare drums for guys in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
He made some great snare drums. He was going to sell me his custom snare drum for like $150, I think it was. And I bought the stupid Slingerland, the Slingerland TDR with the chrome over wood. That drum sounded like crap from day one. You know, this guy made these great drums that people like look for today if you can find them, you know? But he was also tried to sell me a 6.5 by 10 front tom because that's what Gad was using. He goes, no, you got to go 10, 12, 13, 14, you know, all in standard sizes because that was the Gad thing. That was the little Gad kit. And I said, no, man, I want a 12, I want a 13, I want a 14 by 14, I want a 16 by 16. So the only thing I wish I'd bought that day was the 6, to be honest. I was so happy I got the 16 by 16 and the 14 by 14 because I will tell you there's nothing like a 16 by 16 Gretsch floor tom. It sounds so big. It's huge.
The Power Tom thing did get a little out of hand. I know you saw that kit I bought and just flipped a while back.
Oh yeah, with the rivets.
Yeah, well, that was a dark time in Ludwig history with the rivets on the seams. But gosh, what were those? Yeah, they were 14. It was 14 by 14, 13 by 13. I mean, it was ridiculous. How are you supposed to play these things? You know, the only way to do it was to set them up 10 feet up in the air and tilt them. You know.
Yeah.
Your wife says you also wanted sideburns. You couldn't grow sideburns?
That's funny, honey. She got me on that one. Oh, yeah. Well, I had a hard time growing hair for a long time on my face, but
Yeah.
I will tell you the day I cut my mullet off.
Now,
Because, you know, I came back from Nashville. I had mullet hair for that band I was in.
yeah.
And I'll never forget, I was 31 years of age, okay? And I had the mullet. And I was doing the ponytail thing, you know, the little rock in the ponytail thing.
Yeah.
I couldn't get the earring for some reason. I really wanted to get an earring at that point too, but I never got the earring. I'm rocking the ponytail, and I'm at a friend's garage sale, and this guy gets off a bike, you know, a biker bike, you know, and he's got gray hair, and he's balding in the top of his head, and he's got the ponytail on. He comes up to me and he goes like this. Yeah, man, we got to stick together, you know. And we got to stick together. And he starts like heavily identifying with me because I got this ponytail on the back of my head, and he's got his ponytail, his gray ponytail. He's like 50-something years old at that point. And I looked at him, I looked at me, I looked at my wife, and I went over to my wife. I said, I'm getting this thing cut off. The next week I got my hair cut. I had it snipped off, and never had a ponytail again after that. But
Actually, she said Cinedrums. Sign drums? Those electronic drums? I have dyslexia.
Syndromes?
Syndromes. Syndromes.
Syndromes, yes.
Was that the Buddy Rich thing? Was it?
Buddy Rich had a syndrome.
Yeah, he did, didn't he?
That was 1980. He bought he brought a syndrome out with him. Did you ever play the syndromes?
No, never.
Oh, they were terrible. Okay, but they were cool looking, man. You got to admit they were the first electronic drums, and they had this little rack thing. No, it wasn't a rack. It was just like a little controller, and they had 4 pads, and they had heads on them. This Duraline drum heads. I don't know. You ever hear Duraline drum heads?
No,
They were made out of Kevlar. They were Kevlar. The first.
Well, I remember I remember Remo made Kevlar heads. And were they yellow? Were they yellow?
They were yellow, yeah.
Okay,
Yellow
I think
Kevlar.
I think I maybe I did have one of those on a drum way back in the 80s.
I mean, they were like Kevlar. I mean that's like
Yeah.
riot shield
Bulletproof
stuff.
vest, yeah.
I mean, so, but they sounded. Boo, 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 boo.
I know the sound. Bill Bruford played him, didn't he? Or did he play Simmons?
You know, Bruford played Simmons.
He
played
Simmons.
the SDS 5s. I so desperately wanted a set of SDS 5s. They were $5,000. That's how much they cost when they came out.
That's crazy money. I mean, what year would that have been? 84,
82,
85?
88. No, it was 82, 83, 84.
Okay.
That's when they first came out. And I went to Freehold Music. They had one of those, and they were like playing on riot shields. I mean, they were tabletops. I mean, guys were like busting their wrists and their elbows and stuff, hitting these things. Okay, so but they sounded really.
Yeah.
My wife said it's a fad. We had bought this house and we had all this like metal in this garage. The guy that I bought the house from, we got a real great deal on this house in Asbury Park, but the guy collected junk. So the deal was we bought the house. I had to clean the junk out. So I had a basement full of junk. I had a garage full of pipes and junk. It was all white pipe mostly. It wasn't really brass, most of it. But I kept saying to my wife, I'm going to sell all the pipes and I'm going to buy a Simmons kit. That was my big dream. That never happened, needless to say.
Yeah, you'd be thankful for that.
I did it. I want it so bad, though.
I never liked electronic drums. Like, I still don't. I know I whine about this all the time, but I really just don't like
Better be careful, dude. You don't get Jay out there.
I know, and Jay knows my feeling on these things. I understand and they're way better than they used to be. And I've even said like his kit is I could get into playing that because it looks and probably feels like playing a live drum kit. But
right.
I've got a Roland TD11 and it's just I die a little every time I have to play that drum set on a gig. I just don't like playing it, you know?
Well, I had a Simmons SDS1. That was my first one. I don't know if you remember the SDS1. It was one pad and had an EEPROM. And you put the EEPROM in it, and it had a run generator on it. So it would go. So you hit it at different points in time. You didn't know what sound you were going to get. You go doo, boom, boom. You didn't know what you're going to get because it was constantly running. And you could slow that down if you wanted to. But I had one of those. It cost $300. It was not cheap. It was $300, but it wasn't MIDI or anything. And then the next thing I bought was a D4, a Lisa's D4, and those were interesting.
I actually played in a band. Before I got into this band, they recorded their entire album. Their entire first album was recorded with remember the cat pad? Remember the roll?
Yeah.
Was it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the drum. So it was recorded on a cat pad with a D4. It wasn't. That wasn't what it was. It was. I'm sorry. The D4 came later. Their first album was recorded on the old Roland R5. So it like.
Oh, you mean the R8?
The R8. I'm sorry. Yeah, the R8.
R8. Yeah. The RX. Yeah. The Yamaha had the RXs.
And I got in a band and it was the same thing. I'm like, I am not. It became time to record the second album. I said, I am not playing on that stupid cat pad. I'm not recording an album on this thing. So I actually talked them into doing real drums. But I demoed everything on that cat pad. And it was to me, it was just a toy. You know, it was a cool toy. You know,
I did a session once on an Octapad. The keyboard player in the band Saved by Grace that I was in that did Nashville, he bought an Octapad. And he also had a friend at AT&T. This was literally AT&T Bell Labs back in the late 80s, who was making these foam pads. They were made out of structural foam and rubber and piezo tweeters in them. And he had a couple of those, too, as samples. I ended up using them with my D4 for a while. They were really bad pads. They were really terrible. But the Octapad was kind of cool. I learned, I used that a few times.
Did you ever upgrade to the D5?
No, I sold my I traded my D4 to my friend Pat O'Donnell for a Noble Cooley snare drum.
That was a good trade.
It was a great trade until I traded it back. I think here was the trade. The trade was it was the Noble Cooley snare drum, some bongos. There were some bongos in the deal. There was a couple other percussion toy things, you know. And he got like my 14-inch Rototom, and he got that D4 and those stupid pads that I was telling you about, that structural foam pads that really looked really weird. One had an AF in, or yeah, it was Anton Fig. AF. He had AF in. He actually put AF initial. He wanted to give it to Anton Fig. He never gave it to Anton Fig, the drummer in Letterman. And had an AF on it. And I gave that pad to Pat. And then a couple years later, Pat had an endorsement, Sabian endorsement. And Pat had just got a bunch of cymbals from Sabian for free. He got 2 sets of the same cymbals. So he didn't need 2 sets. So he said, well, you know, I had a Manhattan Ride, a couple other things. Anyhow, long and the short of it was I traded him back to Noble Cooley. I said, I want this drum back, but I want to get these cymbals. Because once I got these cymbals, I traded to my friend Scott, and I ended up getting the Gretsch kit, the little Gretsch kit I have here, because it was part of the trade. I traded him a Fibes kit. I had a Fibes kit.
Was it a fiberglass or was it a?
It was fiberglass. Yeah, it was fiberglass with the brown Italian restaurant Formica tabletops look. Okay. I don't know if you ever saw that finish. It's disgusting.
Is it like the?
It's like a brown marble.
Is it okay? It's not the parquet looking thing then. That's what I'm.
No, it's brown. It's brown marble finish. Okay. But I remember all the Jersey pizzerias had this brown marble tabletop, so it was like Formica or something. I don't know. Anyhow, I traded him the Fibes kit and the Manhattan Ride. He traded that to him, and I got the little Gretsch kit that I have. That was the first time I had the little Gretsch kit. I had that for years. Then I traded it to him for a Noble Cooley kit he had. And then we just traded that back. I had a Noble Cooley kit for about 4 years. And then it was a 9x13, 16x16, the biggest bass drum I ever had, 18x22. And we're over an hour, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. This is cruising.
We still have people with us.
There's still. I don't know I don't know why the hell they're watching this. there's according to this, there's 14 people on.
Hi, you guys are great. I'll tell you.
You guys are hardcore, man. We are nerding out, man.
We have definitely nerded out. You got the fiberglass drums.
I played I was talking yesterday about my buddy who is a drum tech. And he had a Noble Cooley snare, and I think he still has it. Man, those are great sounding snares. I'd love to get my hands on one someday.
I had a 7x14, which was my friend Scott's. Matter of fact, I'll tell you how I got the 7x14. I had a friend I did these worship gigs with in New Jersey, whose dad had a set of 14-inch K Istanbul hi-hats. Really thin. I mean, they're probably like 700 grams each.
The real Turkish case.
I'm not Constantinople's. I'm talking about Istanbul.
Yeah.
I mean, they were sensitive hi-hats. Now I'm a rock drummer at this time. I'm bashing on these things, and I can already see a little crack coming on the keyhole. So anyhow, I see my old long lost drum teacher Scott Hayes, and after about 5-6 years not seeing him, we get together one night at his shed, his garage shed, drum shed, and I brought these hi-hats with me. And he's a jazz drummer. And I pull them out, and he goes, "Where'd you get those?" He was like freaking out. I said, "Well, my friend Dave said, you know, I can't sell them to anybody because they were probably worth $1,000 at that point."
Yeah.
I mean, they were Istanbuls.
Yeah.
I knew they were, and eBay was just starting to come on. This is like 96, 7-ish, you know. I said, I can't sell them to you, but I'll tell you what, we'll have this trade. I'll trade it to you, and if I have to get them back for my friend David, then I'll, you know, because he gave them me kind of like, don't sell them kind of thing. So I gave them to my friend. I gave them to my friend Scott, and then he gave me his 7x14 Noble Cooley. And that's the drum he brought to my 30th birthday party. and showed me for the first time I ever saw a Noble Cooley and touched one. That was the day I remember touching it. And this drum I played on my wife's album. I had that for about 10 years, that drum. He still has the Istanbuls. He got that drum back somehow. We through some other trades of other drums because we're crazy. I get bored with stuff and it's just easier to trade it to somebody, you know.
Those Istanbuls got to be worth big money nowadays.
They're worth $2,000 now. They're worth easily $2,000.
Yeah.
You know.
I put an ad out. Every once in a while I'll put an ad up. I think Craigslist or something said, you know, I'll buy your crappy used drums. And I had a guy contact me, and he had a set of old Turkish Ks, you know, and he was not letting these things go for less than $2. I tried, but he was not. You know,
and I have a real problem with these guys that put them up on eBay. You know, they put a $2,000 22-inch K Istanbul ride, and you can't hear it. And a lot of them sounded like garbage. I mean, the good ones don't go away, and they don't come out that often.
Right, exactly. eBay ruined a lot of like the whole vintage drum market because these guys put these kits up at ridiculous prices. When I buy something with the intention of selling it, I put it up for what I consider to be fair market value. I actually quit messing with eBay. I don't sell on eBay. You
can't make any money on eBay. That's why
I sell on Reverb strictly, and with Reverb everything lasts. It sits longer, but it does sell. And 90% of the time I get my asking price because I put a fair asking price up on it. You know, I look what the market is, and I sit right around the market value. You know. But eBay sucks. I'm so done with eBay. You know.
Well, but back in the day, that was the only game. That was the only
place. It was, you know,
unless you're going to buy it from Not So Modern Drummer, you're going to buy it in the ads. You ever subscribe to Not So Modern Drummer?
A while. I was on the electronic one for a while, but yeah, not anymore.
I have like a whole bunch of issues of Not So Modern Drummer from back in the day. Yeah.
I never see. It's funny is I didn't really get into the whole vintage drum thing until, you know, I'd been playing a while. I was never a gearhead, which is funny. Like looking at me now, it's like it's all I talk about. But I was not a gearhead. I was like Cole Trickle in Days of Thunder.
Yeah. I didn't have the money to be a gearhead. That was the thing. My kids were young. I didn't have the money.
I didn't
until
really know
I
how
bought that green Vista Light kit. That was that changed my life there. So
I didn't really know how to tune. Literally, I didn't know how to tune drums. I had no idea. I just drove the car, man. I just drove the race car. I went fast and turned left. You know, that's all I knew how to do. And for like one day, just out of necessity, I'm going to teach myself how to tune drums. And I did learn how to tune. And then I didn't really get into vintage drums until I was playing in a band and the guy had an old, he had a Vista Light kit. I'm like, gosh, I really like these drums, man. They sound cool. And then eventually I went and bought one. My first, actually, I think I talked about this to you before, is my first drum set, my very first drum set was a Ludwig Mod Orange, just like John Densmore played with the Doors.
Oh, cool.
That was my first drum
set.
Mod
Orange. That's a real ugly kit.
Oh, it's terrible. Look, clown vomit. Bunny Carlos calls it clown vomit. But
yeah, it is. That's no doubt about that.
And here it is. It's the 1980s. What is the uncoolest drum set you could possibly play in 1987?
That would be one of them.
Would be one of them. And all I could think about was, I gotta get I gotta get a Rockstar. I gotta get a Tama Rockstar. I gotta get, you know, and that's,
You traded it for a Tama Rockstar? Or you bought a Tama Rockstar?
No, I didn't. I was an Imperial Star. Concert Toms.
Okay.
Concert Toms.
Yeah. With the that funky paint inside of the
that's like speckled paint. I don't even think those were plies. I think it was like pressed wood or something. I think it was just a bunch of glue.
The same thing. Ludwig was doing the same thing. They were making their concert toms out of that same junk. They were spraying that in there.
Well, Ludwig's they sprayed the that speckled stuff on the rockers too, back in the 80s. And
they were doing that to the concert toms. My friend Bill McCabe had a 60s. I had this kit for a while too. It was a 14 by 24. 9 by 13, 10 by 14, 16 by 16. Marine Pearl kit.
Okay.
And I had a blue Ludwig Vistalite kit, right? And I remember I talked my mom and my grandmother into buying me an 8 and a 10 concert tom for the Vistalite kit, all right? So my friend Bill McCabe upped it. He got a 6, 8, 10, 12 Marine Pearl to match his kit, his big bass drum kit. So he upped the game. They were all had that gray speckled. This was like 77, I guess, around there.
Yeah.
You know, I eventually got that kit because the church I was at bought the kit from them. And then I left the church. And then after I left the church, they didn't have a drummer for a couple years. And then they got a new pastor. And the pastor was going to put him on the curb. And my friend was the deacon. And he said, don't put him on the curb. I'll call the old drummer up. And he called me up. And the next day I drove there and picked up those drums and brought them home.
Yeah.
So I had those drums for free. Until I sold them off, of course.
Yeah. Those
I sold the concert toms off. I sold the big bass drum off. The Pisces 15x4. I had a set of 14-inch Pisces 602 sound edge hi-hats with that kit.
Oh, really?
Yeah, vintage.
I actually
come through my hands, man. That's one of them.
With the Imperial Star, it was, I don't even remember the sizes. I know it had a 24-inch bass drum. And I think it probably had like 12, 13, and then it had 2 toms, like a 14, and probably a 15, because that's how they did concert toms, right? You normally it was like 12, 13, 14, 15, or whatever, 13, 14, 15, and an 18-inch floor tom. And then later on, my bus driver, when I was in high school, my bus driver's like, hey, man, I got this old tom and drum set. Would you be interested in it? And I went and looked at it, and it had an 8 and a 10-inch tom, and then a 16-inch floor tom. So I was actually, to put this monstrosity of a drum set together, I had 3 rototoms, 10, 12, 14, 16, 8, 3 rototoms, 4 rack toms, 2 toms over here, 2 floor toms, and 1 crash cymbal.
But you had a lot of toms, dude.
I had a lot of toms. That's when I was going through my Neil Peart phase. Yeah, I went through a pretty hardcore Rush phase for a while.
We all need to go through that phase where we have the concert toms. That's a lot of fun. Those were great days.
Yeah.
I saw something about Mapex drums. I had a good friend in New Jersey who I gave a little Ludwig kit. I had a 14x20, 8x12, 14x14 Marine Pearl kit, Ludwig kit. And I gave it to my friend Rich Sullivan, and he sold it to Pat Petrillo, the famous rudimental snare drummer guy from Baltimore. He sold it to Pat Petrillo so he could buy his Mapex kit, his Power Tom Mapex kit.
Power Tom Mapex kit, huh?
Yeah, it was like deep 10, deep 12, 13, 14.
Rich Raw Dog drums. My first kit in 1981 had a Rogers used kit with rusted hardware. Did you ever have a Rogers kit?
I have not. I wish I had. I tell you, I would love to have a set of Rogers drums.
I have.
I have a Rogers catalog though.
It's never made an appearance in any of my videos, except I think I got it on like a couple really old videos if you look back at my channel. But I have a Rogers Big R kit that I bought from a guy in Madison, Wisconsin for $300. It has extra holes in it. It's just an ugly. They don't like the kit doesn't match. You know, it's a big, like the bass drum's Big R and the floor tom's Big R, and then the rack tom's like 972 Fullerton. It is the best sounding drum set I own, bar none. These
Why don't
are
you play it? Put on a video.
Remember how I said I don't have enough room to keep all my drum sets in my house? It's at a friend's house in Milwaukee right now. I really should get it back. And
you should get that thing back.
It is.
I thought the Big R drums were amazing drums, by the way. A lot of guys didn't like them, but I thought they were great drums.
Because they're the hardware was ugly. The bass drum spurs look like fence posts.
Memory lock, the memory lock hardware was. I will tell you something. The American companies started making some really bad hardware in the end of the 70s. Mm-hmm. I mean, the hardware went down on Ludwig, it went down on Slarland. As Tama came up, I mean, Tama made the best hardware in '78. They had the first boom stand was incredible.
the 80s, the hardware they were putting out in the 80s, that was like the golden age for that company because they were putting out, remember the tilt stands? Remember the tilt stand? Great. I had a hi-hat that was like that, so I could tilt that hi-hat.
Tilt in, yeah.
Yeah. Great. I love that. I loved all that. And that drum set I just bought, that ugly Ludwig rocker concert tom kit, had about 10 Tama stands that came with it. So I got all these. I kept them all. Yeah, I kept them all. I'm keeping them all for sure. You know, I told Tony needed a couple stands. I said, if he ever gets down my way, I'll give him a couple. But for the most part, I'm going to keep most of these. And it's got the old Imperial Star. Was it the Imperial Star hi-hat with the big cylinder on the side? You know what I'm talking about? I had the big piss.
Yeah, I know which one. Yeah.
I had one of those back when I was in high school, and it got run over by a bus.
The hi-hat stand you're talking about, right?
The hi-hat stand, yeah. My dad was actually able to, like, put it back together. I used it until, I graduated from high school. Just great hardware.
Did you get any pedals out of that deal? Did you get any pedals with it?
With that drum set?
Bass drum pedals?
No, there wasn't any bass drum pedals at all.
Yeah.
There was no bass drum pedals.
I had a Tama 1980s King Beat pedal.
Okay.
They were like direct drive. They had this big honker of a cylinder that you twisted on, kind of like the spring like the Ludwig Speed Kings.
Yeah.
Except this compression spring is on one side. It was a great pedal. It was fast pedal. The problem was they used this really cheap steel on the bottom. So you had like a lever to put it on.
It was like a pot
rim.
metal. Yeah, it was like a pot metal.
It was a pot metal.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So if you over tightened it, like I did one day, over tightened and then tried to put the lever down, I broke it, and I could never get it to sit on the rim of a bass drum again, and I had to throw the thing away. I was so ticked.
Did you ever?
It was what?
Did you ever have a ghost pedal? Did you ever have a Ludwig ghost pedal?
I've played them. I've never owned one.
I had two. I don't understand. Like, you look at a Ludwig boards, these guys rave about these pedals. I don't get it, man. I thought it was terrible. Like, when
I never figured. Same thing with Speed Kings, by the way. I don't really like Speed Kings either. I have one. But
I have a couple. I have a couple Speed Kings. I never play them. They're extra pedals. I don't even know what I'm gonna do with them. Because I can't sell anything.
I traded my first Speed King for a Gretsch floating action, and then I got rid of the Gretsch floating action and got the Tama. Mm-hmm. And you know which pedal I found in college, and was the Camco by Tama chain drive.
Yeah, those are great pedals.
I had two of those pedals. I still have one today, and they're great pedals. They work great.
That's what all the metal guys do back in the 80s. They all of them, like when really fast double bass was starting to become a thing, they were all using those Camco pedals. The original Camcos, not the Tama
with the
reproduction.
big sprocket, the huge sprocket.
Yeah. Rich.
We still got people there?
We do. we lost a few. We lost a few. Yeah. Little Drummer Channel, Yamaha hardware is the best current for me. Yamaha does make great hardware too. They make great drums.
I bought my first Yamaha hardware probably in 1980 when I was in college. It was the 7 series that went on their stage drums. They were called Yamaha Stage series, and it was the single brace stand that Gadd was using back then. He didn't use the double brace, even though he had the recording customs back then.
Yeah.
And they were easier to move. I still have some of those stands. They were great. It was great hardware. Great hardware. I still got some of that stuff.
Yeah, I still I only got one Yamaha. I got 2 Yamaha boom stands, actually. But I really, like, as far as hardware goes, I just love the Tama hardware. I love their hardware. I think it's just great hardware.
Tama makes great hardware. Yamaha makes great hardware. DW makes great hardware. Just expensive as all get out.
It's too expensive.
Didn't think about buying that stuff.
I have
one piece that somebody gave me. It's the one cymbal stand looks like it's part of a DW. It's just the arm. Mm-hmm. It's got the big plastic thing,
Yeah, I know the one you're talking about. What kind of pedal do you use now?
I have an Iron Cobra it's the Flexi Glide one. It's the one with the nylon strap on it. Okay. And I have a double pedal in that, and I got a single pedal in that.
I have an Iron Cobra also. I don't even know. I think it's the second generation. It's an older one. I bought it in like 2000, right around there. And I lost the case that, it comes with the case, and I lost that after a few years and just started throwing it in hardware bags. I don't take care of it by any means, It just gets thrown in a hardware bag at the end of the gig, and it just keeps on ticking. I've never done a thing. I've never done a thing to that pedal. It is, I always say, it is the single most reliable piece of drum equipment I've ever owned in my life because I don't take care of it, and it just keeps going.
I hear you. No, they're great. They're great pedals. I think Iron Cobra's top notch.
The difference between a Rockstar and a Star Classic is the difference between a Dodge Neon and a Porsche. Beats by Jay, ladies and gentlemen. Beats by Jay. Well, I think, man, we've been going an hour and a half. I think we should probably wrap this thing up.
I agree with you. My wife's probably already fell asleep at Beach Bargain Hunt.
Bargain Hunt, yeah. All right, my man.
Well, thanks everybody for hanging with us.
Thanks.
I know we didn't do a lot of question stuff, but we took a few out there. I guess we took you swiped a few of those questions out of that.
I did. I'm trying to get better at keeping an eye on the chat because it's hard. It's hard.
It was driving me nuts looking at yours and my face and trying to read these things. So I have to be honest.
I'm watching on OBS. And I got the stream going on the computer also. And then my computer, it's starting to get a little overheated and a little hot, I think, because everything's slowing down. So I've just been keeping an eye on my iPad. So I think it went well, though. I think I had no technical problems this show. This is my first technical free problem show since I started.
And I have to be honest, I thought we were going to lose it 2 or 3 times because I heard thunder. I saw my iPad was just swirling like this.
Yeah, I had that too.
And I'm going, okay, I wonder how long this is going to last for. So to get an hour and a half out of it, that's a huge deal.
Yeah. All right.
Well, too bad you can't monetize it, but...
I know. I could get like $1 out of this thing, man.
Well, she might have got a couple hours worth of viewing time if we.
I know. The one I did with Jay, I got a day and a half of viewing time out of that thing.
Hey, man, you just gotta get 500 more subs, man. So everybody hit the sub button, like button.
Hit the like button too, guys. Hit the like button.
About the haters, so we'll leave that for another show someday.
Yeah. All right, Earl.
Somehow I got 5 dislikes on my big band covers. So
you got haters. I'm telling you, that's a sign of success. When you have haters, it means you're doing something right. I'm not getting trolled a lot though. I'm kind of really I really wish somebody would just come on and just shred me on one of my videos, but it hasn't happened yet. Not in a while. I had one a while ago, but I've been accused of cheating and not playing, but not. I really want that guy to come in and just say you suck. I'm just waiting for it.
I've had it, so don't worry about it. It'll come, dude.
It's
coming in a matter of time. All right, I think we better wrap this show up right on the money, because they're all dropping on us.
All right. Thanks, Earl. Guys, have a good night, man. See you later.
See ya. Bye.